And let's bring in Emily Harding, Vice President of the Defense and Security Department at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, for more. Emily, thank you for coming on. What does this shift in power in Syria mean for Iran, and what kind of an impact does it then have on Hezbollah?
Iran really is the big loser in this situation. They were using Syria for a long time as a land bridge to get weapons from Iran across the land into Lebanon to resupply Hezbollah and then threaten Israel. They have now lost that access. Further, Assad was a huge ally of Iran, and now they don't have that either. With all the things that have happened in the last few months, Iran really is on their back foot. They've lost power. They've lost a lot of their proxies in the region.
Now, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu's office now says that Israeli troops will stay in Syria for strategic reasons, but they're slightly beyond the buffer zone. Talk to me about the importance of that space and why keep Israeli troops there.
So where the Israeli troops are right now is the Golan Heights, and that's been a contested area for decades. In the last round of peace talks, the Israelis got part of the Golan Heights and part of it went to Syria. When the government collapsed in Syria, the Israelis said, well, okay, we're going to push forward a little bit farther into that contested territory. From their perspective, they are heights, so it's the high ground. From there, you could easily threaten parts of Israel. It makes sense for them to reoccupy parts of those Golan Heights, because we don't really know what's coming next in Syria and whether or not the new government, such as it is, seeks to threaten Israel. So they really are just creating an additional little buffer zone from which they can protect their people.
Now, HTS, the rebel group in charge right now, is promising law and order, but there are a number of other groups seeking influence here. So how do you see this playing out?
Right. So the national security space, we jokingly refer to this as the battle of the five armies. It's a J.R. Tolkien reference. But you have so many different parties that are trying to vie for influence in Syria. You have, from outside forces, you have the Russians, you have the Turks, you have the Israelis, and then inside Syria, you have HTS and groups that are aligned with them. You have the Free Syrian Army, and then you have the Kurds out in the other part of the country, and all of them are looking to maintain their foothold and have some influence over what happens next in Syria with this incoming government. Expect there are going to be a lot of sharp elbows, a lot of people who are looking to secure their little piece of territory and then figure out how to make this run in Damascus.
Now, Secretary of State Antony Blinken is visiting Baghdad as part of his trip to the Middle East. He's expected to talk about, among other things, what happens in Syria next. How important is U.S. support during this transition period, and what are you watching for from the U.S. in the next few days and weeks?
The presence of a small cadre of U.S. forces in Syria is actually hugely important. The Kurds, who are out in the west of the country, they have been allies of the United States, and they've been a real bulwark against the growth of terrorism. They were a huge, influential piece of the fight against ISIS or the Islamic State. They remain that way. The U.S. will want to defend those allies. Also, we don't really know what HTS is planning. They're saying they want to have an inclusive regime. They're saying they don't plan on being Islamist. They won't be a haven for terrorists. But the U.S. really cannot afford for Syria to turn into a new haven for terrorism. Our influence is going to be critically important. Plus, we're going to want to push back on the Russians in yet another arena.
All right, Emily Harding, Vice President of the Defense and Security Department at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Thank you.
Thank you.